Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful. I'm back in the studio today with another little experiment, me just kind of playing around with some tea staining. I did a video that I just put up where I used some of this tea bag paper, and I thought I need to, while I have some tea mixed up, just kind of continue and try some things with these different papers that I've been ordering. So recently I ordered some tea bag paper as I was hunting for the mulberry paper that I had been using to do the faux old document kind of thing. As I'm, scrolling and looking for paper, I see things I didn't even know existed. And one of those was tea bag paper. So it's for artists. It came in kind of a roll. I don't remember how many sheets were in it. I'll try to find where I purchased it and put a link down below for that. But it's these, I think they're like 16 by 16. And you may be able to get different sheet sizes. I think this is just what I happened to run across. So I'm going to have to research that a little bit and see if you can get it in pads or in different sizes. But this seemed like a manageable size for me. So I went ahead and ordered it. And of course, I don't really know if I'll use it in this size, but so far I've just been trimming it down. So because I'm going to run this through my printer in most cases, or just use it in journaling, I need to work with a little smaller, and it's easier to store that way. So when I measured it, it was just a little bit, I think like 16 and a half maybe. So I work a lot in US letter size because I'm in the United States. So I just trimmed mine to 8 1/4 just to get it in half. And then I ended up with some scrap on the bottom that I'll use too. So you just take this and you can trim it by hand. I used my guillotine cutter and just trimmed up a bunch of paper that I have here. And then I just want to tea stain it because I already had this tea mixed up. So these are my sheets sizes that I can run through my printer. I've got a cookie tray here and then just a little bowl with the leftover tea that I'm using. So to do this, I had used this in the previous one, if you didn't see that video, where I was trying to make some recycled tea bag, what looked like recycled tea bag that I used to reinforce my pages, fragile pages. And so I used some tea bag paper, which didn't work out for this. So you'll want to watch that video too, because that was a different experiment. But I did try this, and I thought I do like how it comes out, even though it didn't work for what I was intending. So I wanted to do some more. So I'm just wadding up my paper because I do want it to have some wrinkles and creases in it. And I ended up just kind of doing a bunch at one time, so it can kind of steep in there a little bit. And I actually did 8 sheets at a time. I haven't cut that much paper, so I'll have to use some of these little ones. But just kind of dip that in your tea and then just wring the excess out. And then just open it up and kind of lay it here. I don't need it to be completely flat or anything, because I want it to kind of get some interest in it. And then just lay them on top of each other, and they don't need to be smoothed out or anything. I found that doing 4 and then 4 in a 325 degree Fahrenheit oven, it took 10 minutes. It may have been a little bit less than that, but I set a timer for 10 and it was fine. So I'm just going to lay these, sorry about that, lay these side by side. And again, you can do more or less. If you want it to dry quicker, do them one at a time. But I felt comfortable leaving them for 10 minutes and you could do more. But I'm not laying them really flat. So by the time you do 4 and 4, they're kind of sitting piled on your cookie tray. So then you just imagine that's 4. Maybe I'll add some of these smaller pieces. Just to fill up my tray. And when you do this, the ones on the bottom are going to end up a little darker than the ones on the top, because they're, the tea is kind of settling low, and it's in the tray then, and it's going to make the bottom ones darker and the top ones lighter. So I kind of like that too, because then they're all a little bit different. And if you want some spots on these, I didn't do this before, but you can always just get your fingers damp and then just kind of do that, and there'll be little places for the tea to kind of pool, and then it'll be a little bit more tea stained by the time it's baking. You could also just do this and air dry these, but this is just for me. Doing them in the oven is faster, and I kind of like how they sound when they come out, and they're crinkly. It's just a little bit different baking them than drying them naturally. So let's just do a couple more to fill my tray. Okay, once your tray's filled, just go pop that in the oven and set a timer. I use my timer on my watch, and then those will come out nice and brown. They will come out looking like this. And you can see this, I don't know if you can tell the color. This is a little bit darker than that side. So maybe if I get 2 of these and do them side by side, you can see the difference. So I had them laying in my tray like so, okay? So this is how they come out. I love that. I'm half tempted to just make a journal like that because I just like how crunchy it is. But I really like the texture of it when you, let me get this out of my way. When you do these, I just like how they sound. And I like all the wrinkles. But you need to, if you're going to run these through your printer, you need to iron them. Now, somebody gave me the idea in one of my comments, I haven't tried it, is if you don't keep your iron out like I do, and you have one of those laminators, which I do have, that you run a laminating plastic sheet with your paper in between. You can run paper through that laminator without the laminator sheets, and it just irons your paper. I haven't tried that yet, but I'm going to grab my dirty, messy board and show you how I iron these. This is how flat I got them just using my iron, but it was tricky, so that's why I wanted to go ahead and do this video and show you, and then just show you some of my printings. So I'm using my quilter's cut and press, and you can see why I end up, when I was doing the bubble papers with inks and things, you end up ruining your, if they're not dry like mine often aren't, and I'm trying to get them completely dry, you will end up ruining the top of your ironing board, just making it dirty, and then you won't want to use it for clothes. So I keep this on top of my ironing board just for my crafting things. And that way, the other thing it does is, because it's hard on the other side, it's harder than my ironing board, which has more padding. And so I can actually get my papers ironed a little more flat. So I'm just going to take my hot iron, and I just use it on the highest setting with the steam on. And you'll see, if it's hot yet, it will iron it, but not great. It's ironed, but it's still pretty wrinkly. So I found for this, now I haven't tried this on other papers. I haven't really felt the need to, but this, I really needed it to be more ironed. So I just took a little water sprayer, and even though I've let this dry in the oven, is if you just spritz it a little bit, it will iron really nice and flat. So much better than ironing without the water. So you can just see that's so easy to go through my printer. But you can see the tea staining. I like that because it just gives that old look. I really like the texture and weight of this. There is kind of a right side and a wrong side. This side's more smooth, and you'll feel this side has kind of a roughness to it. I haven't really paid attention to when I put it through my printer, if one side's different or the other, and I'll run my hand over these and see if I could even tell if I used a wrong side or a right side. I think once it's printed, it's really kind of hard to tell. That kind of feels like it might have been the smoother side. This one too. So maybe I just got lucky. They all kind of do. Okay, so you're going to iron all of your papers, and then I want to show you how they look when you print it. And then I had also kind of a happy accident. So when I was printing these, let's see, I went on my computer to just one of my Italian ephemera. I have a digital kit, and I think this is a new one that I just scanned, so this is not in the kit, but I do have a digital kit in my Etsy shop for some vintage Italian book pages and things. that you can do and then print out. So they give you, you know, when you do that on this kind of paper, the mulberry paper, this tea bag paper, I would say would be my second. The mulberry paper was a little thicker, but they give you that really cloth kind of feeling. When I clicked on the picture without opening it up, just from the file, you know how it'll give you like a little thumbnail. I printed directly from that, which didn't change any of my settings. It just printed it. And so this is what happens, is it's printing it the size of the image in the file. And so you end up with all this border around. Plus, it doesn't change my quality of printing or anything. That was an accident because I didn't realize I had not clicked on the picture. So I'm working on an Apple MacBook Pro, so it may be different on a different type of computer. But when you click on a picture, on an image, it brings it up in preview, and that's where you can change all your print settings. So that's what I like to do, and I wanted to show you this example just because it's just a difference in settings. Now, ignore this little thing. I'll explain this to you. But when I printed it on thin paper setting, this is the same exact document, but notice the color difference, and I really liked this better. This is more true to what the original looked like. This is a little darker. So if you go into your printer settings, you can change the paper size, you can change how it fills up the paper, whether it's borderless or not, that sort of thing. You can custom size it to the size that I actually made my paper, because, you know, I cut this by hand. And then actually when you tea stain it or anything and you've gotten it wet and dried it, sometimes it will actually shrink up so it's not the exact size. I don't really worry about that so much because for journaling, I'm usually tearing off the edges anyway. So I just wanted to show this because this is just on a regular plain paper setting, same document on thin paper setting, which automatically sets it to high quality, but it's just so different in the color, and I didn't change the color at all. So I had also tried printing it again, or a different one. This is the same one, forgetting to do it again on the thin paper setting. And so it comes out darker. This one was a little bit different. Sometimes when you're running it through, and I should show you all the mistakes, it started to grab the paper and it didn't finish printing, so I just ran it through again. And then it put too much ink on it. But what I do is when I have these mistakes, like, you know, little bits like this, I don't worry about it so much because it's either probably going to get trimmed off, or I can use it stick it in my pile of collage papers, because that may be totally fine. You know, you can tear off parts of it for collage. When I'm going to do something and want to actually use it as a folio, I would trim the edges of this off. Just get a little tear ruler and just get rid of that. And then you have kind of a nice little rough edge. Oops, well, that was a mistake. And then you could actually fold it in half and actually just put it into your journal. So most of my journals that I'm making are smaller anyway, so that worked out fine. And then I end up with these strips that I put in my little, you know what I do, my scraps pile. Okay, so you can do that and just fold it in half. You can use it as collage paper. I really like the weight of it for that. When I do get some ink smears, this one actually is good that I could use inside a book. This one is good. And this again is using the thin paper setting versus not using the thin paper setting. So these are all fine. This one does have a little bit of ink on it. So what I do when I get a little messed up spot like that, and I want to see if maybe I can make it usable and not look like a mistake. This just happens sometimes when you're running thin paper through your printer, and it'll just get little smudges of ink here or there. It doesn't really happen with normal weight paper, but you know, this is just an unusual specialty kind. I'll go ahead and get it wet. You might even want to intentionally make age looking spots. So you can just do this with water afterwards. This kind of smeared that black ink a little bit. Let it sit there and just kind of make it smeary intentionally. because then it just looks like maybe it just aged. It just got water damaged. But that's okay too, because if this was really an old book page, then it might have water damage. So then I just go back and I iron it again and dry that out. And so that can still be a nice aged effect and make that totally a usable spot again once I trim this off in a journal. So I don't get rid of my mess ups that come out of my printer, because usually you can, cover it up with something and still use it. So that's just kind of a little tip. I'll show you a happy accident that was a lot of fun. The other day, if you watched that video, I was trying to cover the inside of my tray so that I could use that thinner paper for my faux tea bag. And so I had taken this piece of the tea bag paper and I folded it so that it would fit in my tray. And I just used that as a base layer so that I could lay the thinner paper that I was using, which was, I think I put it away already, my baker's tissue. That's what I ended up using if you didn't watch that video. But it was sticking to my tray, so I used this and I laid it down on the tray, put my baker's tissue on top of it, and did the whole tea staining thing, which came out great. Well, then I had this big piece that I hadn't cut, and I thought that looks really interesting, but I needed to iron it. It had a lot of coffee and stuff on it, because I also used some of my instant coffee, which you can do with this too, but this was the experiment that I did yesterday. So I had all this extra, coffee stain and all that, and I really liked it, but it needed to be ironed. And so I had to spritz it. And when I did that, I had ink from before on my board. It's pretty well soaked up now because I really wetted it a lot yesterday. But I noticed the transfer of some of this peacock color, and it looked really pretty, kind of like watercolor through here. So I actually did it intentionally. I went ahead and I sprayed every little blue spot, this whole thing, and got my board wet to try to pull up all that ink into this tea stain paper. So I just got it really wet. I don't know if there's any left to pull up, but I just went and got all of this board wet. And then when I put my iron on it, I don't know if it'll show. You see, it pulls that blue up into my paper. So I kind of just used this then, and I got that really interesting kind of effect. I'll show it up close here in a second once I get all this ironed up. Now, I don't know if you'll want to do this to your board intentionally, but I'm kind of half tempted to, honestly, because it was just a nice way to get that transferred onto this paper. And that was just, a total accident, but I really like the effect of it. So like I said, I'm half tempted now that I've gotten most of the ink up off of this. I'm half tempted to spray it with some ink. Maybe I'll find another substrate or something that I can make a board that I don't mind. I liked how it pulled it up this way. So that was just kind of fun, happy accident. And I think if I do this even more, that would be just like these nice big sheets. That would be some pretty wrapping paper even for something. So anyway, that was just kind of a fun, happy accident. Now I have to try to figure out how to make this intentionally without ruining anything. So that is my share for today. My experiment tea staining on actual tea bag paper and then running it through my printer. So I hope this inspired you to do some experiments. Have fun with this. I'll leave any links down in the description. Have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.